Well, thank you, Radhika. It's of course great to be here. This is I appreciate you and the International Manifesto Group putting this together, especially in a rather hurried way. Um, I am actually at the moment in Kent, Ohio, where we are commemorating the events of May 1970. And it is a situation where it makes me think not only, of course, of the celebration, the wonderful victory of the people of Vietnam at the liberation of Saigon, April 30th, 1975, but also 5 years before that, when on April 30th, President Nixon announced the invasion of Cambodia, clearly indicating that American imperialism, far from the much touted secret plan for peace that he said he had, was actually intent simply on continuing its neo-colonial war and expanding it indeed at that time. That triggered massive demonstrations here in Kent, Ohio, a university town in the Midwest, that culminated 55 years ago today in the shooting by the Ohio National Guard of 13 students, 4 of whom were killed, 9 wounded, and the suppression, the demonstration by the American state that it was willing to use lethal force against pretty much anybody in the effort to perpetuate its power and to suppress any opposition that was expressed to its imperialist campaign in Vietnam. That, of course, also echoes that today, in addition to this week that we have, beginning with the anniversary of the liberation of Saigon and the reunification of Vietnam, this is also another anniversary today, which is the anniversary of the May 4th movement in China in 1919. And when again, many young people, students, but also many other people joined in the streets of Beijing to protest against the betrayal of China by the victorious imperialist powers at Versailles, who were, clubbing together and awarding Chinese territory, which had been seized by Japan. They allowed them to keep that after World War I. And this was a complete betrayal, as I say, of the interests of the Chinese people, Chinese sovereignty, and simply another moment, another step on the path of imperialist exploitation in China as well. So we're here, we're gathering here today. I'm afraid I'm going to have to depart after my comments because I need to go to the commemorative events, which are going to start in just a little while. But what links, of course, the liberation of Saigon, what links the killings here at Kent State, what links the demonstrations in Beijing in 1919 is anti-imperialism, is the way in which ordinary people, working people in countries all around the world have repeatedly risen up, expressed their frustration, their hostility, their opposition, and their determination to resist and to push back against imperialism wherever it rises up, wherever it attempts to extend and maintain its power and its control. So when we think about, okay, we're celebrating this anniversary, we're commemorating these various things, what are the lessons that we draw from Vietnam? What are the lessons? What are the things that we need to know and we need to learn and we need to bear in mind going forward? And I want to just touch on sort of 3 aspects of this that I think kind of summarize or in some ways give us the guidance that we need. First is simply that the willingness, the need, the imperative to struggle, to fight, to push back, not just to say, oh, this is a terrible thing. Oh, we really sympathize with, the situation in Vietnam or the situation in China or the situation in Syria or Palestine, whatever it might be. We don't simply criticize that, but we struggle, we fight to resist and to change the world so that imperialism won't be the power that it is and has been for so long. And perseverance goes hand in hand with that, struggle and perseverance. And this, I think, is the most important lesson that we draw from Vietnam. The Vietnamese people, a heroic people, but, a small country, a poor country after almost a century of colonial exploitation, and then fighting against the French from 1945 to 1954. The United States then, after the Geneva Conference in 54, steps in as the neo-colonialist, trying to hang on to whatever scraps they could, even though the liberation struggle was successful and the new government is in place in Hanoi and taking care of business in the northern part of Vietnam. The United States occupies the South, sets up a puppet military government, and tries to hang on. But those people, the Vietnamese people, they did not give up. They didn't look and say, oh, well, at least we got something out of this. They looked at it and they said, no, we want to have a unified country. We want to be independent. We want to be able to go about building a future. And for the Vietnamese people, that was a socialist future, a future of shared struggle, a future of shared prosperity. And that's something that they were very determined to do. And that tells us also, I think, kind of the second major lesson, which is that the liberation struggle in Vietnam relied upon the people. This was a people's struggle. This was not something that a political group, a little organization or a movement or something, a party, foisted out on society. This was a mass movement. This was a movement of the resistance, the heroism of people all through the country. And this, of course, was one reason why American imperialism was so brutal and so fierce in Vietnam, because it was impossible for them to separate the liberation fighters and the liberation organization from the people, because they were all one. And that unity, what Mao Zedong used to talk about as being like the fish in the sea. Well, if you've got the sea, then that's where you're going to win. So relying on the people, this is what the Vietnamese freedom movement did. This is what the liberation fighters did, and they were the people. There's not a dichotomy or a distinction there. And the final lesson, I suppose I would say, is to defy the odds. If you looked at the situation in Southeast Asia after World War II, and you looked at the efforts, by the mid-50s of the United States to intervene and change that situation and become the neo-colonial power, it seemed like a total, an immense mismatch. How could these people coming out of poverty, coming out of a country that had been oppressed and now divided, how could they possibly hope to stand up against American imperialism? But they did. They didn't make a sort of assessment and say, oh gosh, we just can't do this. They said, well, you know what? We're going to do this. This is something that we have to do, and we are going to persevere, and we are going to emerge victorious. And they took a brutal beating. The United States unleashed its vast military wealth. B-52 bombers trying to destroy Hanoi and the rest of North Vietnam. It was just a terrible campaign, imperialist campaign, and the Vietnamese people, they absorbed it. They rolled with the punch, if you will, and they persevered and they fought on. And eventually, by 1975, they drove the Americans out in 73, the American military forces. And then in 75, the country was reunified. Saigon was liberated. We all celebrated. We all, it was amazing, the feeling I know that we all shared at that time. And that was a victory that defied the odds. That was something that said, we don't care. And the reason I think that particular aspect of it is so important right now is because here in America, especially, we find ourselves in a very, very scary moment. We find ourselves with a fascist government trying to, undermine our existing order of things and take us even further to a society of oppression and racism and immiseration to the interests of capital and the perpetuation of imperialism. And so, many people I know today, here in the United States are kind of despairing. They're kind of disheartened. They look at the situation and they say, well, gosh, he has all the power, he's got Congress, he's got the courts, all this. And I say, the hell with that. What did the Vietnamese people say? They said, bring it on. They said, we will fight you. We will fight you every step of the way, and we will wear you down, and we will win. And they did win, and that's what we celebrate when we commemorate the liberation of Saigon, and that is the struggle that we need to carry in our hearts and as our inspiration for our fight today. So, thank you.
I'm Michael Hudson. I'm appearing here for the International Manifesto Group. If you like this video and ones like it, please subscribe. For more information, go to the address on the screen.